Okay, episode 1 of Lose Your Life podcast. First of all, I appreciate all the listeners for being on and listening, and huge thank you to the Adam Allred. Thanks for hopping on. Episode 1.
Honor. This is the first one?
Yeah,
I didn't know I was
1.
ground level. Now the pressure's on, dude. This is the launch of...
This is going to set the precedent.
Big things to come, man. So, yeah, it's an honor for me. Glad to be here.
I'm sure we'll have you on again. The guests are going to love you.
Better. My feelings will get hurt.
All right. So for those of you who don't know Adam, he's an expert in business, spirituality, fatherhood, relationships, being a husband. He's one of my greatest mentors. I appreciate everything he's taught, and I'm hoping that all of you guys can learn something big from him. But Adam, you want to give a brief intro on why people should continue to listen to the rest of the podcast?
Well, honestly, they should listen because you, man, you're a stud. I don't know why anybody should listen to me, and I'm still surprised people do because I'm not really an expert at anything. I'm just a guy. I have been in business for a long time. I've done door-to-door sales, as you know. We share a similar career trajectory. You're just, I'm further down the runway than you. But no, all kind of joking aside, I think, what we lack in our society today is really authentic conversations and just being, truthful and honest about what you think and your opinions and your perspectives. And I think that's always a good thing for people to listen to, is when you can really dig in to conversations where people aren't there for an agenda other than just trying to have really high level conversations. So I'm looking forward to this. I love I love this type of content. I digest it and intake it and digest it, and I like being a part of it. It's a really fun journey to be on.
Yeah, my goal is, one of the things that I admire a lot about Adam is he's really good off the rip. And so my goal is to ask a couple questions that stump him, make him think a little bit longer.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and watch this and take notes myself. So I'm really excited for some of the questions, both from me and from my viewers as well. Some people have suggested some questions that I ask you and things that people are curious about. We're just hoping to get the right content. So Lose Your Life is based off of the scripture, "He who loseth his life for my sake shall find it." It's about discovering purpose and fulfillment in your life in every category. So just curious to you, what is your general purpose? Like what makes you tick?
That's a good question. And just for the record, I'm not familiar with any of the questions you're going to ask me, so it is going to be off the rip.
No chat GPT either. These are all from my heart.
Let's go. All right, so very authentic.
Yeah,
Going back to the authentic conversation. So I think every man has the exact same purpose. And, we have a lot of side quests and we have secondary purposes. But the primary purpose of every man is to be the best, most badass version of himself, period. Because until you are good at being who you are, until you're good at being a man, you're not going to be good at anything else. You're not going to be a good husband. You're not going to be a good father. You're not going to be a good business partner. Nothing else will make sense until you are first good at being who you are. So my primary purpose is to be the best version of myself.
And what does that look like for you? What's the best version of you?
Well, it's constantly leveling up and improving, right? Like always looking for ways to be a better man. And it may sound selfish to say that, but again, it goes back to kind of what I'm alluding to. You, as a man, you have to be the best version of yourself so that you can be better for other people. And so that looks like me getting up early in the morning, taking my day seriously. That looks like me staying focused and working hard. That looks like me trying to be present with my wife and with my children and, developing new skills and new perspectives and constantly like in a state of openness to new possibilities and willing to evolve and become a better human being.
Yeah, you mentioned something in that statement. You said being present, with your wife, with your kids, whatever you're doing. I think that's something that we're losing in today's society. Being present's becoming increasingly more hard with technology and with social media. Everyone's everywhere all at once rather than just being in the moment. What has being in the moment meant to you?
From a spiritual perspective, Jesus admonishes us to be like children. And I've heard a million different discourses on what that means to be like children in Sunday schools or whatever. I think to me what it means to be a child is being in the present moment. Mm-hmm. Children are unencumbered by regrets from the past. They aren't troubled by anxiety of the future. And if you have children, I have a fifth one on the way. You know, those kids are just so invested in the moment. And it's really cool as a parent because as you grow older, we lose that magic. You know, we do have this, you know, this life that we may have things that we regret. You know, we have these anxieties about the future. But when you have children, you get to live back in that present moment with them. You get to relive what it's like to have Christmas for the first time, or what it's like to go to it's Halloween right now, take the kids out to the pumpkin patch and how excited they get. And so I think it's a matter of putting down your phones and putting down distractions and just finding, you know, a love for being right where you're at and totally invested in that moment. And so when it's with your wife, you know, you're really invested in what she's saying. You're invested in doing something together that you enjoy and communicating with each other instead of having your mind distracted with what am I going to do tomorrow? What, you know, well, what happened today? Why didn't I do that better? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're just like right here in the moment, and everything else you kind of start to push out. And if you can do that, it makes life really rewarding.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring up children. I have 4 nieces. They're my favorite people in the whole world. They make me so happy. And one thing that I realized actually, we went on a trip to Disneyland at the end of last year, or the beginning of this year actually, and we kept trying to get them excited for it. We kept being like, "Are you excited to go to Disneyland? Are you excited to go to Disneyland?" Trying to get them to look into the future. And honestly, like they had a hard time like looking into the future. They were busy with the toys they had now. They were busy with what we were doing today. They weren't really thinking about what Disneyland was or what we were going to go do. And we had to try really hard to get them excited for it because they were so encompassed in their own reality, which was the right here, right now. And so I think that's really captivating as well.
So have you gone to Disneyland with them?
Yeah, we did. It was
but they were
so
invested
fun.
in the moment there, right?
Oh, man, yeah.
Every ride meant something
Yeah.
to them. Mickey Mouse walking up to them, they get all excited, or whatever that looks like, right? Everything is just so novel to them, and they're so excited. I think we lose that as we get older, and I think it's like the magic of life goes out because we miss how awesome life is right here in this moment that we've been given.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes even at Disneyland, as adults, we're thinking about where we're going to eat, what's the next ride we're doing, and all the kids are doing is looking at all the scenery, looking at all the characters. I mean, I remember a specific moment where we met Chewbacca. We were waiting there for Chewbacca to come out, and my nieces love Star Wars. And so one of my nieces goes up and does like her version of the Chewbacca to him. Is so funny. And then my other niece, who we all thought was going to be scared of looking at Chewbacca, he's a kind of creepy looking dude if you don't know what it is. And she's just yelling hi and waving to him again and again and again, just all in that moment. And everyone around, even people that weren't a part of our family, were just dying laughing at like how like encapsulated she was with watching this character. And so I think like being present is a superpower. And so how would you recommend the listeners to be more present in their daily lives?
Yeah, this isn't something that I feel like I've mastered. I'm like everybody, you know, and the children, you know, that like you pointed out, they have parents that are taking care of all the worries for them.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't like it's just, you know, something we lost because we, you know, because we weren't like, I don't know, because we weren't doing life right. You do take on responsibilities and you have to think about the future and you got to learn from the past. So that's part of the process. But being able to take time to block that out, a lot of how I do that is I start my day off that way. I really try to start off my day by being present with myself, you know, with meditation, with my prayer, with my scripture study. I get up early so I'm awake before everybody else is up, so I'm not caught up in all the responsibilities. And I can take time to really just be still.
Yeah.
And that helps to create a trajectory for the rest of the day. But it's also just being really mindful and intentional about it. Like, okay, I'm going to be I'm coming home from work. I'm going to be stepping into the house. My wife and kids are there, making a concerted effort before I even walk into the house to be present in that moment. Like, okay, I'm going to block out all the stress from today. And I know I got other things I got to get to later today. But let me go into the house for the next 30 minutes and just be super dialed in, playing with my kids, hearing how my wife's day went, you know, and making a concerted effort to push out all the noise. I don't think you can be present all day long. I don't think that's realistic, right?
No.
We were adults. You have to take care of life stuff. But to pick those moments during your day that are important for you to be present, you know, and what that time period looks like. So give yourself a time. Like, okay, for the next 45 minutes or hour, I'm going to be super dialed in. Then I can get back to doing other things that I need to take care of. And then when we get the kids to bed, being very present with my wife. I'm going to turn my phone off. We're going to watch a show together. We're going to talk. We're going to sit out on the deck and, just not even say anything and just watch the sunset go down and not have any distractions. So just picking those moments in the day where you can, and planning them out, being intentional about it, when you can just shut everything else off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I hope to run these interviews is both the interviewer and the person being interviewed feel like they're present in the moment, like we can kind of blur out the cameras and the microphone and be able to have that conversation. And I think those are kind of the most authentic and genuine moments that people can have, is when two people are in the same moment together. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. You said be still, and I thought of immediately my friend Ruben. Said goodbye to him at church. We were at a YSA or whatever, and I said, "Hey man, I'll see you later." And he responded with, "Peace, be still." And I thought that was kind of cool way to say goodbye to somebody, right? Just an interesting idea to remind them, hey, be still. And that comes from Jesus Christ calming the water. How do you find stillness amongst so much chaos? You run multiple companies, you have a lot of kids, you have a lot of responsibility. How do you find calm in that chaos?
Well, I mentioned a little bit of that is setting your trajectory that way. I think most men, probably most adults, struggle with stillness. And I think it's because we struggle being kind of alone with ourselves. Like if you're not in a healthy relationship with yourself, you're going to run from stillness.
Yeah.
You're going to start doom scrolling. You're going to start finding distractions. You're going to watch TV. You're going to find something to fill this moment where there's stillness, so you don't have to sit with yourself and be present with yourself, because I think that's where it starts, is being able to sit with yourself with no distractions and have a communication with yourself. I have a lot of internal dialogue with myself where I try to kind of talk my way through things. I was doing that today, driving back from the gym. I was turned off the podcast, turned off Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I had a 20-minute drive, and I'm just going to talk to myself and talk through the things that are going on in my day. So that's one way that I'm able to do it. Meditation is another one. There's not any words, but that's where, you really for me, meditation is inward. Prayer is outward. So prayer is talking to God. Prayer is expressing to God the things I'm grateful for, asking God for help in things. Building a relationship with the divine. Meditation is building a relationship with the divine inside of you. And so, having grace for yourself is really, really important in this world, especially a world that seems hell-bent on constantly shaming us, and then we buy into that, and then we shame ourselves, and then we have a hard time being with ourselves because we don't really like ourselves. We don't have a lot of confidence. We don't have a lot of self-worth. But being able to have grace with yourself, sit with yourself in the morning. I do this every morning. I'll sit and be like, man, yesterday I screwed that up. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro. I see you trying.
Yeah.
I see you trying. I know you're trying, man. And,
yeah.
It's okay to screw up. You learn from your mistakes. And why did I do that? But not from a critical lens, more from a curiosity and from a desire to get better. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that I do throughout the day that are sometimes even hard to articulate entirely, but I try to lean into that place of just being really intentional about my relationship with myself. Because if I can be good with me, and if I can be still with me, then I can do the same thing with my wife, with my kids, with my conversations, with my buddies, whatever else. That's where it starts.
Yeah. I think of immediately the scripture in Luke that says the kingdom of God is within you, right? And so that meditation and that stillness is so important to be able to decipher and almost give your own revelation. I heard a quote, a couple days ago. I think I posted it on my Instagram as well. But it was God doesn't want to take care of everything for you. He wants you to figure some of it on your own as well. And I think that's done through meditation and pondering and stuff. And the scriptures invite us to ponder a lot and allow us to get that time to think within ourselves and articulate our own thoughts and emotions. And so how important is silence and that stillness to you personally? How do you use that silence as kind of a super weapon in order to go and tackle your day? How does that look like for you in the morning?
Yeah, it's so I get up every morning between 5 and 5:30, and I start off every morning with a face ice bath. and I look goofy. Good thing nobody else is awake. It's dark. The house is a little cold. And then I put my face into this bucket of ice water with a snorkel, and I'll keep it in there for 4 to 5 minutes. But it really kind of breaks out all the clutter from the night before, wakes me up. But it creates a kind of a natural physiological piece to just have that cold on my face. I don't know why that works so well. But then I go right into my meditation, and I do that by being in my office. I put on really calming music, and I light a candle. And I'm sitting in the dark in just the candlelight. And I will spend between 30 minutes to 45 minutes in breath work and meditation. And man, it is so good. Like, it really sets the whole pace for the rest of the day. And as I can't overstate how important that is, because we live in this chaotic world that's full of so much noise, this complex modern technological, interface that we're experiencing in right now in modern society. It's like, we're just surrounded by noise. And so when you can, stillness is it's kind of like training a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get at it. And not only the better you get at it, the more you get out of it and the more you want to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to force myself to do it. I look forward to it. It's like one of my all-time favorite points of every day is in the morning when it's just me and myself. And then after that, I go into read my scriptures and I go into prayer. And then I start knocking things out before the kids get up. And, that is such a foundational element to my day. I think if you win the morning, you went on a mission. I went on an LDS mission. I remember, I don't know if this quote was kicking around when you went on your mission, but it was like, you make or break your mission by the hours in the morning. It was like, what was it, 6:30 to 9:30. My mission, we were supposed to be up at 6 and get out at 10, so it was a little bit different schedule.
Yeah.
But I was up every morning by 5:30 because I wanted 30 minutes without my companion.
Yeah. That was important. Yeah.
It was important to me to have that like alone time. So I was up at like, it's 5:30 every single morning. I had 30 minutes. It was just me. Then me and my companion were getting on our bikes and riding to some member's garage to work out for an hour. And then we'd come back and do our scripture study and everything else.
Yeah. So I think that ties into like very deeply what your sense of purpose is, right? Like, I think the idea of getting better every day and presenting yourself the best way you can, you have to have recognition of falling, right? You got to have the recognition of making mistakes the day before. How do you recognize those mistakes but not let them beat you up?
Ooh, that's a tough one. This will be a little bit of a longer answer. So bear with me if that's okay, and feel free to interject and respond so we keep this conversational. The religious system that I was raised in, and I think this is true for most religions and the society, how my parents raised me from that religious framework. It's a shame-based framework in a lot of ways, and I'm not saying that to throw stones. I love the church that I still go to church, but I grew up like with this idea of worthiness being a thing, and whether I was worthy enough to do this or worthy enough to do that, or whether I was worthy enough for these blessings, and constantly feeling like almost like it was the moral thing to tell myself I wasn't worthy. We in Christianity, we have this concept of the fall that I don't really buy into anymore. This idea that we are all pathetic, fallen creatures, and we're despicable, and if it wasn't for Jesus, God would cast us into fire and damnation. And it's kind of the starting point for a lot of Christians. And so we start off with this natural man sort of concept that we're bad, just as we are. And I don't really think that's true anymore. I was at an event a few years ago speaking at my buddy's. He has a big coaching group, and they were at this resort down in Arizona, and I was speaking there. And afterwards, I was just kind of sitting in this training thing that he was doing, and he had this activity where you would write on this arrow shaft, what was your biggest limiting belief? And then he gave us like 15, 20 minutes to kind of really think through that. And then you put this arrow, someone would hold it against your neck right here, and it was a sharp point, and you'd press on it until the arrow shaft snapped to kind of break this. It was kind of a little, at least initially I was like, oh, this is kind of a little goofy, but I'll do it. I'm here for it. I'll participate. But then after sitting there thinking for like 10 or 15 minutes, what is my biggest limiting belief? Because I hadn't really thought about that. I realized it was shame. It was worthiness. And I wrote worthiness down on this arrow, and then I snapped it. And I have since completely reoriented myself towards the idea of being worthy. I don't think worthy has anything to do with our relationship with God or relationship with ourselves. We came into this world to make mistakes. God set the playing field, this world of entropy, and gave us, very imperfect families that we're born into, very imperfect bodies and perspectives and hardware that's not going to run perfectly. And to think that that's somehow bad is to say that God's plan was bad. Now, of course, Christians will say, well, he sent us Jesus so we can be saved and we can get past that. But I don't even think that's the starting point. My kids, I don't look at my kids as having any shame in them or worthiness in them. They make mistakes all the time. You know, one of them hits their sister in the head with a toy. I'm like, don't do that. There's consequences. You got to learn. But there's no shame. It's not your identity. You're not a bad kid because you did a human thing, you know, that is expected. Like, that's part of the game plan, is to come down here and screw up. And I'll just share one story that illustrates this, and then I can stop blabbing about this. But I went through my divorce 6 or 7 years ago now, and I had this, you know, I was in the throes of it. I wouldn't wish divorce on anybody. You're in the process of that right now. It's horrific.
Terrible.
It's terrible, man. Like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's also been one of the greatest blessings for me. I learned so much from my first marriage. I learned so much going through the divorce. And one of these things was I was taking my son to one of these learning moments. I was taking my son to school. At the time, I was living in my grandma's attic in one bedroom with 3 kids. I had a business that I was building. I was trying to get my kids up, give them breakfast, take them to school. I had my little 2-year-old with me that she would come with me to work, and I'd try to get her to take naps in the office closet. We were living out of garbage bags. You know, just my life was in total disarray, and everything that I thought I knew about myself was completely being eviscerated. And I'm having an identity crisis, a financial crisis, a faith crisis. You know, everything's hitting this Job-like experience, at least at my level, right?
Oh yeah, I've been there.
You know it.
Yeah.
When you've been there, you know it. It's you are in your own personal Garden of Gethsemane, and I was in that. And as a very imperfect person, not handling it perfectly well on any level. And I was taking my son to school, and he said something that just set me off. And he didn't do anything wrong. I just unloaded all of this crap on him in this drive to school. And I watched my son go into the classroom, walk into his school, and his shoulders were slumped. I realized I'd loaded all of these proverbial bricks into his backpack.
Yeah.
And, you know, my immediate inclination as I'm watching him go in is just this shame that descended on me, and this voice inside of me just like, dude, you're such a piece of shit. Like, look how horrible of a person you are, you know, and then I've got this kind of framework that if I just beat myself up enough, proverbially flog myself enough, that I can maybe finally get some penance for my behavior, and this is going to be a horrible day because I'm just going to have all this regret, and I'm driving away from the school just feeling like the worst father on the planet, and feeling like, you know, all of this regret that I sent my son off to school with that, and this voice, it was you know, it was the voice of God. It was in my head, but it was just, son, skip this part. It was like, what? And I stopped, and it was so surprising to me to hear that one and that message that I didn't quite understand. So I pulled over. I was like, what? And it was the same. I heard it repeated in my head, son, just skip this part. And I really sat there for a while on the side of the road before I drove into the office. Like, okay, I'll try to do that. I'm just gonna skip this whole shame part, this whole beating myself up, tell myself what a piece of shit I am. I'm just gonna skip that. And instead I'll get to the punchline, which is, how do I be better? How do I correct this? And how do I not do this again? And it took a concerted effort to do that. It wasn't something that just happened easily, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to talk like that to myself. I'm going to shut these feelings down. I'm going to start expressing gratitude for God that he's sharing something with me. And I'm going to go today into work, and I'm going to do my best and try and be as positive as I can. And I had this great day, and I didn't have any shame associated with it. And when I came to pick up my kid from school, you know, I took him out to do his favorite thing, got him his favorite treat, had this conversation about how I'm imperfect. I'm a kid too. I'm just an adult kid that's responsible for you. I make huge mistakes. I'm so sorry about what I did. I'm never going to do that again. I just want you to know how much I love you. And it became this really cool bonding experience. And the epiphany in that was that I didn't have to go through this entire shame process to get there. Mm-hmm. I could just skip to the good part of like learning from it and say, okay, like I'm a human. I'm going to have grace for myself. I made a terrible mistake, but that's not my identity, and I don't need to be shamed by it. And I think of Christ, you know, when he's talking to the woman caught in adultery, that they want to stone her, you know, and he says to them, you know, you without sin cast the first stone, and they all walk away in shame. And then he says to her, I don't condemn you either.
Yeah, neither will I cast a stone.
Neither will I. Mm-hmm. But he says, just go level up.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not condemning you. There's no condemnation in being a human. having human experience, even in this grievous sin of adultery, which, as far as hierarchy of sins that we can come up with, it's up at the top, right? Like that's a big one. He's like, there's no condemnation. You're not bad because you had a human experience, but go level up for you. Essentially, your purpose is to be the best version of yourself, and you're not living the best version. You don't need to be shamed by that. Just go be a better person. And I've really tried to internalize that message from Christ and that experience that I had at that school that day, that I'm going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I'm going to do things just really bad, some big ones sometimes, but I'm going to skip this whole shame scenario and just get to the part of, go and sin no more. I'm going to go try my best not to do it again, and I'm going to try and learn from this. Why was I there? Why did I say this to my son? What have I not processed? What am I not dealing with? How come that was unloaded on him? How do I fix that with him to the best that I can, to tell him how much I love him and apologize and whatever else? And it's been a catalyst for a lot of, like a reawakening of a different spirituality than the religious spirituality that I inherited in my youth.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the woman committing adultery as you were speaking as well. And I think, it goes back to what God's purpose is, right? And it's men are that they might have joy, right? And so I don't know about you, but when I feel shameful or when I feel regretful, I don't feel joy. And, God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and he'll be forever and ever. And I think when you sit back and internalize that idea of putting off shame, I think it's less about feeling shame and guilt and more about recognition, right? And that's just having a solid sense of self and understanding who you are and understanding what your purpose is and why God put you on this earth. I think the person that understands their purpose, which is the whole purpose of this podcast, by the way, is helping people understand the divine within them. I think when they do, that sense of shame and guilt kind of goes away because the recognition is much quicker. It's a lot quicker of a process. Yeah. And I'm under the impression that anything good comes from God and anything bad doesn't. And, those feelings of shame and regret and those feelings of fear, fearing God, I don't think God ever intended us to fear him. I think he intended us to fear ourselves. He wants us to recognize what direction we're headed, and we can fear the consequences of heading in the wrong direction, but we don't need to fear God because we know God's always going to be in our corner trying to support us and help us. So I've had moments like that too, where I've had those deep, shameful moments where I kind of had that internal dialogue, like, this is my choice. Like, the greatest gift God gave all humanity was agency, and we get to choose how we feel. And the recognition of how we feel and choosing to know, be like, what, I can sit here and sulk and say, woe is me, or I can say, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm going to move on from it. And I think that is the way God intended the gospel to be, is an idea of recognition. He gives us an outline. He gives us a pattern. He doesn't give us a point A, point B, point C. He tells us where we are. And in Ether 12:27, it says, like, come unto me in weakness and I will show you, like, come unto me in humility and I'll show you your weakness and I'll make weak things strong unto you. So obviously that idea of humility and that idea of sense of self allows us to be able to kind of pull apart what we do wrong without having to go through all those shameful moments.
I think I love that scripture in Ether because it's rather sobering. I think we gloss over this first part where Christ says, and if men come unto me, I'll show unto them their weakness. If you're going to go to the divine or the truth, you're going to see your weaknesses. So if you're claiming to follow God, what you're really saying is, I'm ready to be corrected.
Yeah.
Like, God is going to start showing me where I suck. And it's not to punish me. It's not to make me feel bad or inherit shame. It's because that's the only way you can start to grow and level up. And that's the purpose. Christ literally says at the end of his Sermon on the Mount, be therefore perfect as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I think he's literally saying level up. That's the purpose of life. Be perfect. You're not going to achieve that in this short period of time, but you're going to strive for that because that makes life make sense. But I wanted to jam on a couple of things. I've heard a lot of people say that you were saying. I think I want to just, hit on.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear people say, almost like as a badge of honor, like, I don't live with any regrets.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's like a really terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Because you should have regrets.
Yeah.
Regrets is like pain. it tells you where you're doing something
It's a
wrong.
positive thing. Yeah.
You need some some indicator that I screwed up. So regret is a good thing. Shame is a bad thing. Shame is where you start to identify with it. Regret is like, oh, I screwed up. I should wish I had done better in that. And that's the point of learning, right? So regret is a good thing. Shame is a bad thing. And I think another thing you said, like good comes from God, bad comes from not from God. But I think we have to be really careful about how we label good and bad.
Yeah.
Because the things that we often think are the worst things for us turn out to be the absolute best things for us. The things that we would label as bad.
Absolutely.
Going through something really difficult like a divorce. I say this all the time. My divorce is probably the top 3 greatest blessings I've ever received in my life.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was horrific and it was bad. And I was like, woe is me, and shaking my fist at the heaven, arguing with God about how much this was bullshit and I didn't deserve this, and in this victim mindset. And fortunately, God helped me get out of that. But it has been the catalyst for so much opportunity since then. And there's something in this idea of the atonement, in this creative energy that comes from God, that even the worst things that we do, from the worst things that we do, can come some of the most beautiful life experiences and context and wisdom that we can share with other people. And so I think I don't really I try not to anyways. I try not to label things as good or bad in my head anymore. Instead, try to just pull out of that what I can learn. And I'm not perfect.
No, yeah.
And there's one other thing I wanted to add to that in conjunction with this idea of what's good and bad and us going through these vicissitudes of life and making these mistakes. Christ said something, he said, perfect love casteth out all fear. And I've wondered what that meant. What is perfect love? And to me, the closest I can come to expressing perfect love is with my children. It's the only unconditional love that I know exists. I love my wife. I would do anything for her. But if she started cheating on me, if she started being abusive, eventually that love would fade. It's conditional, right? Like every relationship that you have in this life has conditional love attached to it, except with children. My oldest daughter, I told her, I've said this before, any of my kids, they could grow up to be Charles Manson. I'd never stop loving them.
Yeah.
I'd be there for them. I'd try to help them. I'd try to correct their behavior because I care about them.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that they could do that would ever stop me from loving them. It's the closest glimpse I've ever seen to what maybe God's love is for us, this complete, unconditional, perfect love. And I often thought that scripture, when Christ said perfect love casteth out all fear, was us expressing love perfectly. I was like, well, okay, good luck with that. I don't have perfect love for anything except maybe my children, and that's not even perfect. It's just as close as I can come to it. What I realize is, to me, that scripture means the perfect love from God to you should cast out all fear. When you feel God's perfect love for you, then the consequences of actions or the hard times or the bad things, they're not really bad. They're all part of God's plan. It's all part of this process of refining us and developing us and helping us to grow and progress. And when you experience that perfect love and you lean into it, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing this world can do to you that can really hurt you on any eternal level, because there's this perfect love that's in control of everything.
Yeah. I mean, the scriptures say countless times, all these things will be for your benefit, right? And I think, like, as I was going through trials as of recent with my divorce and everything, that those scriptures, I mean, they held me up. That idea that, it was all going to be for my benefit afterwards was the thread that I was hanging on to. The idea that there was a way to grow past those trials and tribulations and actually gain from it rather than be brought down by it. And I think that's the different voice, right? There's 2 voices. There's one that says, your worth is defined by this moment. And then there's the voice of God that says your worth is defined by how you react to this moment. And I think how we react to tribulation and trials and how we, present ourselves in those situations is where we can measure that self-worth, because that's something that's in your control. Making mistakes is actually more out of your control than people think. Going through trials is actually more out of your control than people think. I couldn't control the way my wife thought about me. I couldn't control whether or not she wanted to make the decision to end our relationship, but I could control, how I was going to react to it. And on one end, I remember very clearly hearing a voice like, yeah, you're worthless. You messed up. You ruined the best relationship, like the most important relationship to you. Like, what are you going to do as a leader? How are you going to lead reps? How are you going to go and manage other people? How are you going to learn how to love yourself if the person who committed to loving you for life wouldn't love you, right? And that was the one voice that I was hearing on one end, and on the other voice was like, be still, understand like that everything happens for a reason, and that all things will be for your benefit. Not some things, but all things will be for your benefit. As long as we have that idea of submission to the will of God, and if we're able to say, you know what, I'm going to let, him take control. I'm going to give him my heart, right? Jesus never asks for very much throughout the scriptures. I love studying the New Testament because I think that gets rid of all of religion really as a whole, because Jesus makes it very clear, right? He says, love God, love your neighbor. And then when you're loving God and you're loving your neighbor, in order to love God, you have to love yourself. You have to be appreciative of yourself because God gave you life, right? God gave you the ability to make decisions. He gave you your agency. He gave you all of that. And if you really love God, you're going to appreciate that and make the most of all of that time. And I think that that's our way of showing love for God is by continuing to strive, continuing to be disciplined, right? He doesn't value your worth based off of where you're at, but where you're going. And so, man, we're 40 minutes into this. I haven't even asked one of the questions I had prepared.
Well, so. I just want to, this is great
this is
conversation,
good. Yeah,
but
this is awesome.
That inner voice is so important to focus on. Like, how do you talk to yourself? And Jordan Peterson articulated it so well. He said, talk to yourself like you're somebody you're responsible for caring for. But how often do we talk to ourselves with this, like, corrosive,
nagging,
acidic sort of like just tearing ourselves down?
Most toxic relationship I have is with myself kind of idea. Yeah.
And that's where we start talking about becoming healthy with yourself. And it starts with, how do you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of dialogue are you having? Are you beating yourself up? Are you, thinking and saying negative things about yourself? Or do you start talking to yourself like you're somebody you're coaching? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but instead of like beating you up, I'm going to coach you. Like, okay, buddy, we got to do better than that. That's a good conversation to have. That's constructive. It's not shameful. It's like, oh, we got to level up. We did do that right. That's okay. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That inner voice is so important. I think the catalyst for so much of this is that, I don't know who said it first, but life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. Mm.
Tony Robbins says it a lot.
I've heard a lot of people say it's an internal mantra of mine.
Jim Rome says that as well.
Which was Tony Robbins' mentor.
Yeah.
So it probably came from Jim Rome.
Yeah, probably.
Life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And another step further for me in that regard, in the same vein, is what happening in my life right now a problem or an opportunity?
Yeah.
If I see it as a problem, I'm stuck. And it's a burden, and it saps my energy, and it like kills my momentum. If I see it as an opportunity, no matter how crazy it might be, how much of a curveball it might be or whatever, this is an opportunity, my entire energy changes internally. And then it changes this interface that I'm going, everything changes by just that catalyst of how I shift from thinking of things in my life as problems instead to thinking things as opportunities. Life is happening for me, not to me.
Yeah. And you posted a really good reel about that from, I think you said Zach got it from his mission about Goliath making David, right? And if it weren't for Goliath, David would have never been a king.
Ever. That was the catalyst, right? That was the big, like, in front of the children of Israel. All, the armies of Israel sitting up on this hilltop, and they see Goliath as this giant 10-foot problem. And they're all like, dude, we're not going out there to fight him. And he's cursing their God and making fun of them and ridiculing them. And then David shows up on the scene, and he's like, oh, this is an opportunity, man. Okay, I can show the power of God right now. Like, this isn't a problem. This is a great opportunity to show how powerful the God of Israel is. And then he goes out and slays Goliath, and it becomes this catalyst.
Willing to die for it, too.
Yeah.
No, that's been a huge paradigm shift.
By the way, shout out to Zach Memmott.
Shout out.
Zach over the years has given me some really dynamic pearls, man. That guy's got a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, he does. I'll have to have him on an episode one of these days.
He's good. He's awesome. Man. Yeah, he's a great guy to talk to.
Well, kind of going back to that actually segues perfectly into my first question.
Let's go.
So
hopefully you get me stumped right now.
Yeah, I don't know if this one will stump yet, but I think it's a good thought-provoking question. Especially, it is a question that a lot of people asked when I said, "What kind of questions do you have for Adam?" And it's based off of kind of what you've been able to build. So you built multiple successful companies, you've impacted countless people. But out of curiosity, like throughout that journey, what was your internal compass, and like how was it what guided you to make every significant decision that you've made?
Oh, you already got me stumped. Like, first, I mean, the initial knee-jerk reaction to that is I've always tried to have a really authentic relationship with God.
Mm.
Even being in some authentic scenarios, like I think religion is often very inauthentic. And I think religion is really the enemy of God.
Yeah.
When we start to compartmentalize God and we start making these declarative statements about him and putting on layers of dogma and rules that people need to follow. And it seems like that was exactly what Christ was trying to get us not to do.
Get
and
rid
then
of
we did it.
in the New Testament.
And then we created religion around Jesus. I
Yeah.
don't think Jesus was trying to create a religion. I think he was trying to set us free from all that. Come directly to me.
Yeah.
You know, your North Star is me, the truth. You know, God, he says, I am the truth. And so I've tried, and I don't want to pretend like I've been always successful at it because I've been far from it, but I've tried to always orient myself towards the truth. Having a healthy relationship with the truth, what that means like is peeling back my own layers of self-deception.
Yeah.
My own layers of victimization, my own bullshit story that I tell myself in my head, to try to always be honest with myself and God about what's really going on. Again, I'm far from being perfect now, and I've never been perfect at this in my life, but it's been kind of a North Star for me. And I think that's been for me, that's been my foundation, for sure, is my relationship with the truth, which God to me is the truth. Whatever God is, if he's, you know, a Santa Claus looking character with a white beard and he hands out carrots and sticks, you know, if that's who he is, or if he's
an alien
or some mad scientist
philosophy.
or whatever, whoever created this. I don't exactly know. Every religion's got their different like character that they've created.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if I just peel back all of the man-made sort of construct of who God is the truth. It's the divine. And the truth meets all of us at different places because we're all at different places. So the truth to you, I hate saying it's my truth because that just seems to me like an excuse people have for like not having to like level up or take accountability for it. Well, it's my truth.
Yeah.
But I really do think that if you get past that initial hurdle, we all should be having different experiences with the truth because we're all at different points on the journey. So what God may say to you may be very different than God says to me. Just like with my children, they're all so unique. I parent them differently. I have different relationships. I love them all the same, but I interact with them differently because I know who they are and I know, you know, what their buttons are. And so I approach each one of them differently. What works for one won't work for another. And I feel like that's how God approaches us. And so the truth doesn't have to look universal. I think that's kind of part of the problem with organized religion is they try to say, well, this is my truth, so it's everybody's truth, and you all have to live this way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really destructive mindset to have. And it's a slippery slope because if people are just left to govern themselves, a lot of people are going to justify everything that they do. And that's obviously not healthy. It's not what I'm talking about. But being really intentional about orienting yourself towards what is the divine, what is the ideal best version of yourself, what's leveling you up and progressing you and bringing energy into you and vibrancy and authenticity into you. And I've really tried to approach everything that I do in life that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that there is like a sense of diversity in all of us, right? Like God created us in his image, but not all equal, right? He gave us different opportunities. He gave us different missions and purpose. And I think, like I said, like this is kind of the purpose of this is I want to give people the tools that they need in order to find what their truth is. Because I do think everyone has a different truth. I don't think door-to-door sales is for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur. I don't think everybody's supposed to do, you know, X, Y, and Z in order to find fulfillment. Like, I think fulfillment does come from within. And so it's more about recognizing that truth and using that kind of spirit of truth. And I think of my best friend, you know him, Jay Bird.
Oh, yeah.
Company's
Spirit
mascot.
Spirit animal.
Yeah. We've gotten pretty good at recognizing truth, and we'll verbalize that to each other. So there'll be, you know, times where you or someone else we're listening to will talk, and we'll just kind of look at each other and be like, yeah, that's true. Like just that second to reflect and be like, yeah, what he said was true. And I think that that's important to be able to recognize, you know, truth in the moment and be able to internalize that. And then the sin has nothing to do with the recognition or lack of. It has everything to do with once you recognize truth, your responsibility is to follow that and to implement that and apply that in your life, right? So if I feel very strongly about an idea or a principle, I can't just disregard it and say, you know what, that principle doesn't work for me because I'm not willing to sacrifice X, Y, or Z. Like, I recognize it as truth, and I think that the call to action is immediate. I think that we're supposed to be called to that principle and instill that principle in every aspect of our lives. And so that internal compass obviously has helped you throughout a lot of aspects of your life. Specifically, how has that internal compass helped you as far as like business and leadership?
Well, one, to be totally honest, I don't have, I'm not a great business guy. I have
Great people person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you surround yourself with Byron and Nick.
Yeah. And Dan and others,
And
like
all
my
those
partners,
guys.
our partners that we have here in Ninefold, my superpower is that and I say this all the time. I think everybody has superpowers. Everybody has something that they're just amazing at. And a lot of people have multiple superpowers, but my superpower is that I'm able to surround myself with amazing people. Like I am really, like my friends, my wife, my relationships are my flex. Like, dude, I got the coolest friends.
Yeah.
I got the coolest wife.
Yeah.
I got the coolest kids. Like, and it makes me cooler for having cool friends. And I have a wide range of friends, and the diversity of my friends is so I don't know, so fulfilling for me to have that. And I think I'm able to do that because of the authenticity with which I try to approach life. I try to be as authentic as I can with myself and with others around me, to not put on any pretense, to not try and have a relationship with someone to get something out of them. That, to me, that's just really gross. There's a lot of people that start being your friend because they're like, oh, this could be an angle for me to get to this point or whatever. Like, this guy could help me get here. That is such a turnoff for me internally. Not about people that do that, I understand that, but for me to feel that way, it's just like so gross, like to try and use relationships to get something.
Yeah.
I've never approached relationships, or I don't think that I have, in an effort to try and get something for myself. It's really to just try and be authentic in that relationship and connect with people. And it's been such a blessing for me throughout my whole life to always have really good friends around me, but then to have those friendships and those relationships translate into creating huge businesses and having lots of success. So for me, that's just been the superpower. You know, I listened to this doctor talk about it on, take it for social media science, whatever, you know, these
Yeah.
it felt authentic, it felt truthful when he said it. You know, you're listening like, that sounds so true. He's talking about vibration.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, the highest.
Dr. Espinoza or?
No, it wasn't Joe. It wasn't Joe Espinoza or Joe Dispenza.
Dispenza. Yeah.
It's not Joe Dispenza. I listened to him. No, it was.
I love Joe.
A guy, I've seen a few of his reels, but I don't actually know what his name is. I could pull it up because I have the reel saved.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, that they were able to measure frequency that comes out of people. And, you know, you have these different frequencies, low frequencies like fear or anxiety or depression, or these like low vibrational states of people. And then you have these higher ones like love and gratitude and things. And he said the highest frequency that a human can emit, 40 times higher than love, is authenticity. And that made so much sense to me, because when somebody's authentic with me, even if they're an asshole, I like them.
Yeah.
You know, like they are who they are. They're not putting on any pretense, you know.
Yeah.
You like, dude, I know who that guy is, and I like it. And not only do I like the authenticity, I may not like a particular thing they're doing, or I may disagree with them on things. That happens all the time, but I like how authentic they are. I think, for example, of a guy like Bill Maher. Politically, I'm about as far away from Bill Maher as possible, but the guy's authentic.
Yeah.
He's not just like some puppet talking for some political agenda. He's saying exactly what he thinks. I could listen to that guy all day long.
Yeah.
And I find myself more and more finding commonality with him. It's understanding where he's come from, because he's so dang authentic.
Yeah.
When you are authentic, meaning you are true to what you think and what you're doing and saying align, that's authenticity. So you're not trying to be nice to make people feel good just to be nice, or you're not trying to get something out of somebody you're playing chess, trying to angle something. You can sense that when people are doing that. It feels so.
Yeah.
You can, the chess players are like,
I feel
you don't know what their intentions are, but you know there's something behind the scenes they're not presenting. You're like, ugh, like your walls come up naturally. But when you find somebody that's truly authentic, it invites you to be authentic too. I talk with door-to-door sales. I talk to my guys all the time. I think the number one reason why people buy is you. Yeah. And what I mean by that is your authenticity. Because if you can connect with them, then you'll actually find out if they really want to buy pest control or not.
Yeah.
You're never even trying to sell them. Like when I knock doors, I never try to talk anybody into buying pest control. What I try to do is have a human interaction with them, you know, to get some connection with them, being authentically me and them. And then when you get to that point, then you get on the other side of that wall. The walls come down. Now they're being authentic. And now you're having a conversation about whether pest control makes sense for them or not. And it may not. But at least you know you got past the wall. Yeah. You had an authentic experience. But the crazy thing, and you know this, like you knock on these people's doors, and within 5 to 10 minutes, when you start to have those authentic connections, they're inviting you into their house. They want you to come over for dinner. They're telling you things they've never told their family before. They want you to marry their daughter or whatever it is.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you know what I'm
I've
talking.
been there, yeah.
Because authenticity is so rare nowadays, and so
Yeah.
even though they've only known you for 10 minutes, they've had this authentic experience. It invites them to be authentic, and it makes this really brilliant, beautiful connection. So yes, I do business, and I am more of the people side of things, but my superpower has really been to always try to be authentic with myself first and foremost, and then to be authentic in the relationships that I have with other people. And it's created enormous amounts of opportunity for success. And I think that's the superpower that I have that I'm really grateful for.
Well, and when you do that, you know, like a lot of people say, don't chase success, attract it, right? And I think when you do live your authentic self, that's when attraction starts. You know, like people are attracted to come work with you because they know you're authentic. They know you're not trying to hide your wounds or whatever. I think of 3 Nephi chapter 11. The first time Jesus Christ came to the Americas, first of all, he presented himself, said, "I am Jesus Christ, you know, the Savior of the world. I drank of the bitter cup." And then the next thing he did, do you remember what it was?
I remember 3 Nephi 11, he starts talking about baptism and contention, and
Yeah.
the contentions of the devil and
Yeah.
being one. And doesn't he call up his leaders?
So before he calls up his leaders, he lets everybody come up and feel his wounds.
That's right.
And
he
see his
invites them
wounds.
all to feel the wounds in his hands.
Yeah. And I like that idea. I was talking to a good friend of mine named Cody. He was a manager at the last company I was with, and he was like, I'm trying to figure out why everybody likes you, like why everybody's so attracted to like your leadership. And I realized it's because you're not afraid to like show your wounds and be vulnerable about your shortcomings. And I think that there's a level of doing that in that sense of brotherhood around people. It's good for me to be able to tell my other leaders, hey, this is where I fall short, so I need somebody else to pick up the slack. I think that's authentic, and I think that's how businesses are built, right? Like, obviously, you know your biggest partners, Nick, Byron, and Dave, like, you know all their weaknesses. They know all of your weaknesses, and that creates a symbiotic relationship where you're able to be strong where you're strong, and they get to be strong where they're strong, and that creates an organization that builds a legacy over time.
It's such a force to combat ego when you're authentic about it. Jocko Willink said something really profound. He said, we all have weaknesses. We're all screwed up. And he said, when you try to hide your weaknesses, your insecurities, everybody sees them. When you don't try to hide them and you just own them, nobody cares.
It's like 8 Miling the objection. Yeah. No, I'm super unorganized. So
yeah.
You guys are. I have a secretary for that.
Now you have to be careful when you make those I am statements. Going back to what Christ said, because I am is those are the two most powerful words in the human language. What you say I am, you are literally creating your identity. And so when somebody says I'm just not a sales rep, it's like, well, you could be, but you've created identity now where you're not. So you got to be careful about those I am statements. But when you can be honest though about it, still recognize you got to progress. When you can just own your insecurities and that's something that I've always tried to do. I didn't want to have insecurities, and so I just try to beat everybody to the punchline. If I see some bullshit about myself, I want to own it.
Yeah.
Because then I can control a little bit of the narrative.
Well,
and then I can and then it's not an insecurity anymore because everybody knows it. They know I know it. Nobody's trying to like dance around it or whatever. There's no ego involved, and it creates more authenticity.
Yeah. And it's a media tactic, right? And people know when you're being authentic about being vulnerable too. Like if you're just going up and like saying the stuff that's bad about you because you're trying to get rid of it or control the narrative or whatever, people recognize that.
So gross. I've been into so many of those conversations. I know I'm not perfect, but everything else after that is I am perfect. You know, like,
exactly.
It's like this throwaway statement just to try and like pay some lip service to this idea. And we probably all do that, but yeah, if you can really own your weaknesses and be okay with that, like, dude, it's okay. I'm not perfect, and it's okay that I'm not perfect at anything. That's not a get out of jail free card that I don't have to work on it. I have a moral obligation. To your point, you were talking earlier about the truth. When you see and to me, that truth, the difference between truth and deception is really the only thing that is the difference between good and evil in my mind. It's not following a bunch of rules. It's not making mistakes. It's really how do you orient yourself to those two things. When Christ talks about the wheat and the tares, to me, that's what it means now. I used to think it meant membership in a church or some sort of affiliation. You know, if you're part of this group, you're part of the wheat and everybody else was kind of the tares. I completely erased that from my moral framework now. the real the real morality in this is life is how you orient yourself towards truth or towards deception. Do you justify everything you do? You know, are you deceptive with yourself and others? Are you living in a state of victimization, feeling sorry for yourself, in a state of bullshit, you know, your own little stories you're making up?
Self-deception.
Or are you leaning into the truth? And the truth is going to show you your weaknesses. Ether 1227, you come unto me, the truth. Guess what? The truth is like this big-ass magnifying glass. And you know.
You better be ready to look through it.
I remember people asking, what's the hardest part of your mission? And I was like, the hardest part of my mission was feeling like God had this magnifying glass over all my weaknesses for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, you're just constantly aware of how much you fall short. But that's exactly what God says he's going to do. You're going to come unto me. Well, then we're going to start working towards perfection. If you're really coming to the truth, if you really want to help. Now, if you don't say anything. Just live in your lane and do what you're going to do. But if you're going to come to me, to God, I'm going to start working on you. I'm going to start showing you where you're weak, not to give you shame, but to give you the ability to start to evolve, to start to change, to start to level up, and to start to create a life that you're grateful for and that you're proud of. And that, you know, after this life, when you're sitting around the great cosmic fireside and we're all trading war stories, you'd be like, man, I did this and I did this. I learned this and I screwed this up and I got that. You could be proud of that, grateful for that experience.
Well, I think, you know, we're kind of the artists of our own lives in a way, right? Like we get to choose the direction we take our lives. And I think of Noah Kahan as one of my favorite artists. And he says he can only listen to one of his songs. That's Main on one of his albums. And I was kind of like looking back at that, and I think so often we're our biggest critics in our own like art. You know, what we create in life from our perspective, we do put a magnifying glass on every part. But, you know, if we're painting this giant picture, putting together this giant puzzle, oftentimes all you need to do is step back and look from a different perspective and stop focusing on that one paint stroke that you messed up on and start looking at the overall picture. And you see that you're creating something beautiful. You're creating something great. And if you step back and you don't see that, then that's when something needs to change, right? But I do think that we often find ourselves as our biggest critics, and we're able to, you know, see our mistakes a lot easier. And I think there's two reactions to that. One is recognition and adaptation and changing your way of thinking, changing your paradigms, changing your actions. And then the other way is to just kind of justify it and blur it out. You know, like, you know, I'm actually just going to tear this from my painting. But when you look back at art and what's worth the most today as far as art goes, it's the paintings that have mistakes. It's the paintings that the painter themselves didn't even give to anybody because they thought like this isn't good, like this looks ridiculous, right? Like Picasso is such an abstract artist, and 95% of people would look at that and be like, what is this? And then there's the 5% that are like, this is the most beautiful thing to me, right? And so your art that you're creating in life might not resonate with everybody, but the people that it does, if it's authentic and it's from you, the people that it does will be attracted to it and to you. And so I think that's a huge part of just becoming authentic.
That is so profoundly important, especially in the world that we're in right now, where AI is making everything perfect.
Yeah.
That it's going to be the imperfections that create authenticity. It's going to be the imperfections that create human connection outside of this AI overlord that we're creating that I think is something of the second coming or the mark of the beast. It's kind of both in one, right? Depending on how you use it or how it uses you, right? Like it's going to become that, it's either going to become a tyrant or it's going to be this liberating force. But those human imperfections are what make us human and what make this life authentic. And authenticity leads to the next thing, which is acceptance. Acceptance is the highest form of love. It's accepting ourselves as we are. That doesn't mean you're not trying to level up. Again, I have to always add that. You should accept yourself and then constantly be striving for a better version of yourself. But accept you meet yourself right where you're at. Man, I love you, dude. I try to say that to myself all the time internally now. Like, bro, I love you. Yeah. Like, I know you're screwed up. I know that, but I love you, bro.
Accepting
just
yourself,
how you are.
Wow.
And then, you know, once you can do that with yourself, once you can accept yourself, sit in this stillness, then you can start to accept other people. And, you know, one of the most attractive quality to me about my wife when I first met her, and still to this day, is her authenticity. She just presented herself as she was. And I was like, man, this girl, I'm looking for like the red flags. I'm looking for the deception, you know, because Dave Chappelle has this famous line, you're not dating her, you're dating her representative for the first 6 months or a year.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and that's true of everybody. You know, you're putting your best foot forward. You're not trying
Yeah.
to showcase all your problems to everybody. But she wasn't like that. She was just like, yeah, here I am. Take me or leave me. Not in a militant way, not in a contentious way, but it's just like, if you don't vibe with my authenticity, I'm okay. Like, she was such an authentic person, healthy with herself in a relationship. She liked herself, which was so novel. That it was just so compelling and attractive to me, even though I swore I was never going to get married again. Didn't even want to date. I wasn't even interested in being in any relationship. This girl was just so fun to hang out with because she was so authentic, and so I was authentic. And now we've been married for 4 years. You know, we've been together for 6 years. We've got a couple of kids. We got our second kid on the way. And she's so perfectly imperfect to me.
Mhm.
That's what acceptance is.
Yeah.
Where I want the best for her. I want her to be the best version of herself. She has flaws like everybody else, you know, but those flaws are like idiosyncrasies now that I love.
Yeah.
Like, I love her flaws. I don't come home and be like, damn it, wife, why aren't you doing this? I don't feel that. I'm like, oh, you know,
That's just Kylie.
it's just
Yeah,
Kylie,
yeah,
and I
that's just
love it
her.
about her.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to change that. Like, of course, I want her to be the best version, happy, healthiest version of herself. I'm there to encourage her and support her in her journey of her being her best version. But I accept her right where she's at.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need her to change or do something for me to be satisfied or to not be irritated with her or anything like that. But it starts with authenticity, and then authenticity leads into the most beautiful form of love, which is acceptance. It starts with yourself, accepting yourself. Then you can accept other people. And it's just, dude, it's where life goes from black and white into like HD color, dude. It's so cool.
Yeah. So that mention that you made about AI, I think that's interesting. I watched something like maybe 10, 15 years ago, and it was like a Nike commercial. And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but basically, like, robots come. It's like a short film. Robots come, and they just take over the sport of soccer or football, whatever country you're in, right? They take over the sport, and they play perfectly, and they just get beat down. Like, they assemble this super team, and they get beat down. And then Nike portrays it as the creativity of each of those individual players. So you got like Wayne Rooney. I don't know if Messi's in it because you think he's Adidas, but like Cristiano Ronaldo, all these different players that were like affiliated with Nike. And it was such an effective commercial for me because I saw the beauty in being human, right? Like, there's these, on one end, there's these perfect robots, like AI, that plays the game so well. And so they figured out at some point in this short film that they had to use like their creativity in order to win. And they ended up like winning the game or whatever. And it's like, you know, Wayne Rooney doing these crazy passes and Cristiano Ronaldo like moving the ball on his feet to a point where like the robot can't even calculate like which direction he's going to. That sort of idea where it's like there is such power in creativity and individuality that I think is so important. I think being that authentic version of yourself, like you said you are, and like you said Kylie was to you, like that is so impressive. So I had a question.
And one thing I just want to say on that, how
Sure.
interesting would it be to watch a basketball game where all the players were perfect?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be interesting at all.
No.
Because what's interesting
And
is seeing...
Steph would find a way to win anyway.
Yeah. Especially, I've watched that clip you shared with me like 4 or 5, 10 times now. But it's fascinating to see an imperfect person strive for perfection and at moments hit perfection, where you see somebody pitch a perfect game, or play almost perfectly in a sporting event, and you're like, oh, that's so cool to see.
Yeah.
It's also cool to see the mistakes and the screw ups, and it makes this whole thing interesting. If it was just perfection, and you could just, I'm going to go see perfect people play perfect people, it would have no interest to the human mind. It's the authenticity, it's the imperfections that make everything interesting in life.
Well, yesterday the Warriors played the Nuggets, and on one end, Aaron Gordon was having his version of the perfect game. Like, he was like 9 for 10 from 3, which as a big man, not supposed to happen. On the other end, there's Steph, and Steph ended up scoring 16 points in a row and outscoring the Nuggets by himself in the fourth quarter and overtime. Like, absolutely absurd performance. And so that's like what I look at it is just like, man, that's so cool. But if Steph did that every night, you know, it's whatever. But at one point, Steph took a shot where he came off of the screen. He's like 7 or 8 feet behind the 3-point line. He comes off the screen, gets a ball, and he just shoots it. And not a moment in my mind did I doubt that it was going in, because I knew that's how he plays. You know, I'm like, when he threw that ball up, it was truth. Like, that ball was going in the net. So I think that's
I love you
that's a pretty
described that as
cool
truth,
concept.
'cause
Yeah.
those types of things reveal the truth.
Yeah.
You know, your personality doesn't get the basketball in.
Yeah. Oh no.
The story you're telling or convincing people or selling people on isn't going to make that basket.
Yeah.
It's the truth. You shot it.
Yeah.
It was perfect. And that's what is like this. I don't know.
And
That's art.
Years of preparation go into making that basket, right? Like one of my favorite quotes about preparation comes from the Navy SEALs, and it says you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your preparation. And I think of like Kobe and all these like great athletes who hit these game-winning shots. And I actually did some research on it just the other day. Only 1.2% of games even end with the chance to have a game-winning shot. But what does everyone do when they're in the gym? They imagine that game-winning shot. They imagine that moment.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Your friends. Like,
yeah, and then you're like, oh wait, there's a rebound.
Yeah, there's a rebound. Wait, we got 3 more
There's
seconds.
3 more seconds. Puts up a shot. Goes out of bounds, but wait, they got the ball back. Yeah,
I do that endlessly because I never make the shot. So I have to keep giving myself 3 more seconds.
Yeah. You got a 45-second possession to get the game winner. Yeah. Well, sweet, man. I love all the things that you've said, and honestly, I am gonna have to go back and listen to this and take a lot of notes about this stuff. But I kind of wanted to go back a little bit to that authenticity part, because I think that is such a big paradigm shift that I've had with conversing with you. That idea of being authentic and stuff, I didn't recognize it. I think I was authentic in a lot of aspects of my life, but I didn't recognize like how important that was in everyone individually. So we talked about kind of like who your authentic self is and what you are true to yourself. How do you recognize authenticity in other people?
Yeah, I think it's innate. I think it's absolutely innate. You sense it. And it's kind of like what you were saying earlier. We can jam it on at the beginning of this conversation, is that you can train yourself in and out of things. But I think all of us as humans, we have this, we label it in religious terms or spiritual terms as like the light of Christ. You know, this light that we can recognize light in other people. We can recognize darkness. We lose that in the sophistries of life and in the charismas and the echo chambers we get in, our own inclinations and stuff like that. It's easy to lose authenticity. But if you're really in that stillness, present with yourself, when somebody says something that's truthful, you know it's truthful. And when somebody says it's something that's not, it lands differently. I don't know how to explain how that works, but it's something inside humans that we recognize the truth when we see that. We can see the authenticity. And I think it's more of like an energy exchange than something really tangible that I could say, well, it's this step. This is how you weed out inauthentic people versus authentic people. I think it's just something you feel. Like, man, this person is so real. Like, I just love being around this person. I don't have like a silver bullet answer for that, other than I think you just have to listen to your intuition. You listen to that internal compass inside you. How does that feel?
Yeah.
And try to remove out all of your own noise. Because if you got a lot of noise in there, it's going to cloud out authenticity. It's going to cloud out that receptor. So if you got a lot of confusion in your head and you're struggling to be authentic with yourself, you're going to have a really hard time recognizing authenticity in other people. But I think when you're authentic with yourself, again, authenticity to me is where it doesn't mean when I say be the most authentic version of yourself, I'm not saying to myself, just accept everything about who I am right now.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need to do anything to change.
Yeah.
Screw you, world, deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
There's so many people that are like that. That's narcissism.
Yeah,
right?
that's
the opposite. It's like the worst thing you could be as a narcissist. Where,
there's a fine line between narcissism and acceptance.
There's like a shift there.
Yeah.
But authenticity is when what you think aligns with what you say and do.
Yeah.
When they're the same thing. So you're not, I was just being nice. When somebody says I was just being nice, what they're telling me is they weren't authentic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I get it.
That's what it is.
If you're not interested, say you're not interested, right?
Yeah, and you can say it in nice ways too,
Yeah.
or you don't even have to say anything at all, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you have to go around being an asshole. Like, that's not authentic. You're not going around policing people. But it's like, just like, be honest with yourself and own what you think that is what you're presenting to the world.
Yeah.
And that's real authenticity in my mind. And when you're in that state of authenticity, then you can recognize authenticity in other people.
And I think authenticity too is very intimate, and nobody owes you authenticity right off the get-go. If somebody chooses to give you authenticity, that's their choice, and you can choose to accept that. But nobody owes you authenticity at any point. I had a spiritual experience about a year ago. Yeah, it was. We were in California. I was selling solar, and I had a really interesting spiritual experience where I was just sitting there and praying, and I was like, "There's so many things where we say like balance, right? Like, oh, you got to balance this." There's so many different actions that somebody can take that in one way would seem vain and in another way would seem righteous. And at that point, like a voice came to me and said, the line between sin and righteousness is intention. Mm. So if your intention is vain, then it's a sin. And if your intention is outward focusing, then it's righteous, right? Like I think of a great example, easy example is like going to the gym. If you're going to the gym, you know, to just like look hot, meet all these girls, and just you want to like pump yourself up and be better than everyone else, I think that's kind of a vain ambition. Whereas if you're going to the gym because you want to be the best version of yourself and you know that going to the gym is what it's going to take, you want to be physically capable if anything were to happen, right? Like you have, how many kids? You have 4 or 5? Fifth on the way, right? You got 5 kids who, if an earthquake happens, a flood happens, you got to be able to carry a couple of them. Kylie's got 1, maybe 2, you know, the small ones, and then you got to be able to carry 4 of them, right? Like that's the type of idea where I think those vain ambitions become righteous. And so a vain ambition that the world struggles with and a false idol that the world serves right now is money and affluence. And so how do you set the line between, like as far as intention goes, with wealth and affluence?
Yeah, great question. Wealth or any other external success is not the point. It's never the point. It's not a bad thing. I think wealth is great. I think success, external validations are super great and at times very helpful, but they're not the point. They're just mile markers, you know, on the road. They're kind of like a scorecard for what really matters, which is the internal development. It's always about the internal. And we try to stress this with our guys, our sales guys all the time. Like the external validations will take care of themselves when you're focusing on the internal inputs. Like what is it, you know, our business, making money as a business for me is important, but it's not because it's the point. The point is how much we are developing as a business, how much we're developing our guys, how much we're developing as individuals. That's the whole point, because the money will come if you're doing it right. And it is something of a scorecard you can measure. Like if I'm not making any money, it means we're not really doing this very well, which is a reflection of me, what's internally going on, right?
Yeah.
So the money is great in terms of like a measurement or any other external validation. I'm not disparaging those or throwing those out. I just want to make it clear for me, and what I think is important to recognize is that the external validations are never the point. When somebody makes the external validation the point, it's a very unhealthy pursuit. Because let's say you make money your point of life. I know guys like this. I know guys who have spent their whole life earning money. They have lots of money, and it's never enough. They have a very unhealthy relationship with it because it's never enough because somebody else has more money than them. So there's always this comparison factor. And so even though they've accumulated huge amounts of wealth, they're not satisfied with it because it's always in a comparison with other people. So they may be richer than this guy now, but this guy's got more money than me, and I gotta take that guy down or whatever. If you are looking for a relationship, an external validation, I need a relationship. I need somebody to make me whole, somebody to make me complete. That's like the first red flag that you're not ready for a relationship, is if you need it, right?
Yeah.
The relationship should be the natural product, the byproduct of how you're living your life. You have a healthy relationship with yourself. You're focusing on the inputs. You're focusing on the things you have control over. And now, you know, you attract somebody that's doing the same thing, that's got the same energy. And now you have 2 healthy people, and you can make a healthy relationship. So to me, it's always children. And then most importantly, you know, you create healthy children. I mean, the biological mandate that we all have is to create life and to raise it well. Like that's like what nature has told us we're supposed to do. Everything else is like a side quest to that. Be the best version of yourself, survive as long as you can, and then prepare the next generation to carry the torch into the future. But as long as you're focusing on those external things, to me, that's just a reflection of somebody who's not healthy. And when you focus on the internal things, not only will the external things show up, but they will come in their proper place and proper time when you're prepared for them. So they don't control you, you control them. Yeah. Because money doesn't have power over me. Yeah. It never really has, because it's never been the point to me. Now I like having money. I like having freedom. I love having those things. Like, You know, you may start off with the goal, like I need to go out and make money. I got to get a job. But that shouldn't be the focus. The focus has always got to be on your own internal development. It goes back to the primary purpose of every man on this planet is to be the best version of yourself. Everything else is a side quest to that. Everything else.
One of my favorite, I'm sure a lot of people are feeling called out a little bit, which is good. You know, that's the purpose of the podcast, is to have those kind of thought-provoking ideas and questions, and you guys get to decipher for yourself whether or not it's your truth or not. One of my favorite BYU speeches is called Wrestling with Comparison. So we won't go too in-depth into that, but if you're looking for, you know, how to combat, you know, that comparative culture that we belong to right now in that society that just tells you to be better than everyone else, Wrestling with Comparisons, it's a BYU speech. I don't know the guy's name off the top of my head, but I will add a link down below.
I actually think comparison can be a good thing.
There's
right?
great aspects of it. Yeah,
you know,
you could use
Jesus
it as
at
a
one
tool.
point to Joseph Smith said, "Hey, you're not yet as Job." That was a comparison.
Right.
Like you're complaining and feeling sorry, your life is in disarray. You're in this prison, you know, but you're not yet as Job. Just a little context.
Yeah.
I've always thought comparison, like with our sales guys, is like, yo, if somebody else can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Like that's a healthy comparison.
Absolutely.
Like that was something I leaned on a lot my first summer. I was like, I didn't make a sale for my first few days, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I don't know if I can do this, but these other guys are doing it, so I can do it. They can do it. That's a good comparison. The comparison where you're not good enough because somebody else is doing it better is bad. They're on a different trajectory. They're on a different race. That's a bad comparison. But the comparison that if somebody else did, I can do that, that's a motivating comparison.
Yeah. My rookie year went out with a car group of like 6 brand new rookies. I brought out like 5 brand new rookies out into Texas, and we all sold day one. None of us had any training. None of us even knew the pitch whatsoever. And my brother was the only one who got a sale. I just remember the car group afterwards, and everyone's like, bro, what? How'd you do it? And then it just instilled this belief. I'm like, okay, if he went out and got a sale, like,
exactly,
I could figure this out, right? Yeah.
He's an idiot.
Yeah. No,
I'm not saying your brother is, but I remember being like, dude, I'm as good as that guy. Like, if he can do it, I can do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
well, my brother's one of the smartest people I know. He's been an awesome impact on my life too.
I wasn't meaning that about you.
No, I know. Yeah.
Specifically, just
just a quick shout out to little bro.
Let's go.
Well, we got about 10 minutes, so we got to hop off in a meeting. So I'll just ask you the last 2 questions. We're definitely gonna need an episode 2 because so much more that I think we could go over and stuff, and a lot that you can add in. But the first question was somebody else asked me, and it was, how did you know that Kylie was the one?
You want the real answer?
Yeah. I want a real, genuine, raw.
Well, so I had a lot of noise. I had a lot of baggage from my first marriage, and I had all of this. I wasn't in a place of bitterness. That was one thing that was unique, or place of regret, right? When I came out, kind of got through the divorce and everything else, for whatever reasons, and that's a much deeper conversation, one I don't even fully understand. But I came into being single really grateful to be single, and I didn't have regrets. I felt like I'd tried my best as imperfectly, as I was a very imperfect husband in my first marriage, deeply imperfect. But I had given it everything I had. I'd tried my best to make it work. And because of the marriage was so toxic, I had no longing for the past. Like, I was like, dude, I come home, and I've come home to an empty house when I didn't have the kids. And it was novel that I could just sit on the couch and read a book and not have somebody, like, trying to tell me what to do. You know, that was so liberating that I skipped some of the pitfalls that some of my buddies who were going through divorces at the same time or have since got into, which was either regret or bitterness. So I skipped that. But I was also certain I was never going to put myself in a position where somebody else had that control over me. So even though when I first started talking to Kylie and I thought she was so authentic, she was so incredibly cool, I liked hanging out with her, I really enjoyed our time together, I walked away from our first date. Our first date was so fun. She stayed over at my house.
Yeah.
All the entire night. Like, she drove so she could leave if it didn't work out. Like,
Yeah.
she came to my house.
Yeah.
She wouldn't let me pick her up, and I got it. So she's like, I'll come to you. We went out, grabbed dinner, came back to the house. We hung out, sat around the fire out back for hours, just talking all night. It was just this really awesome. I was like, man, this girl's so cool. She's so fun. I'm never going to marry this girl.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not getting married again. She went home and told her family we were getting married.
Oh, there
Like,
you go.
I met the guy.
Yeah.
I met the guy. So
Finally.
two totally different
Yeah.
like experiences. But the reality is, because I had so much of this wall built up, like this mindset that I was, in a sense, closing myself off to opportunities in life. Like, I was never going to get remarried again. It was this kind of thing that I was just because of the baggage of a first marriage I wasn't going to let happen. The honest answer is 3 months into our relationship, we were on a trip to Costa Rica with a couple of my buddies and their wives, and I took psilocybin for the first time. And it was a singularity event in my life. I'd been thinking about taking psilocybin for a long time, listened to really intelligent people talking about it on podcasts or people that I knew personally, was super fascinated with it. And I was interested in taking psilocybin as a way to increase spirituality, like feel like I could connect at a different level with God maybe. And I wanted to be open to things and trying new things. And so much of the things that you can't do this, you can't do this is what I believe, this is what I don't believe. All that stuff was kind of on the table when I was having all these crises going through a rough marriage and divorce. And I was inspecting them, is this really helpful or not? I was like a lot more open and nuanced to things in life. And one of those things that was really interesting to me was psilocybin. And my buddy, I didn't even know when we went on the trip, he's like, yeah, I got some psilocybin. Do you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I was the only one that took it. No, nobody else did.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can compare it to, and it's not the same thing, but the only thing that comes close to being so transformative for me was the birth of my first child. Like I knew when I was having my first child, I was like, I'm not the same person. Like my hardwire is changing in real time. Everything's changing. Like, and I knew it. I was like, I will never be the same person now that I have a child. I'm a completely different person now. That's how I felt with that psilocybin trip in a different way. And one of the things that I've experienced with psilocybin is it removes all of your bullshit during those journeys, like all the stories you're telling yourself, the narratives. In this case, the walls that I had built up were just torn away during that time period. It was just ripped away, and you're just left bare. And that can be really terrifying. And you see yourself and all of your flaws can get very nihilistic. That's why people talk about heavy journeys. But it's also very healthy because you can actually address the roots instead of just weeding the surface level stuff that we get caught up in. You can see, oh, this is why I'm angry. This is why I'm depressed. This is why, like, you see yourself as you really are. And in this case, I was with Kylie, and I was like, this is my person. Like, I just knew it. It was so clear as day. Like, this is my person. And that's been just as true then as it is now. Like, she is my person. And it was funny because we'd been dating for 3 months. I've never been like this. I was never even close to getting married until my first marriage. And I've never been that guy to race into a relationship ever in my entire life. We've been dating for 3 months. We're in this beautiful tropical paradise in Costa Rica. And I'm like, you're my girl. You're the one. I love you. We need to get married. And she was like, and then she started panicking. Yeah. No, but she started panicking. No. And then, like, she's like, yeah. I didn't know. I wasn't picking up. I wasn't reading the room, right? I was just in the psilocybin state. Like, I finally, oh my gosh, I see this revelation. We're supposed to be together. Our energy, everything, our authenticity. This is, like, so beautiful. And then, like, we got home, and a week later, she's like, yeah, I went to church and prayed, and we're not supposed to get married right now. Oh, and man. I was like, did the mushrooms lie to me? And she wasn't saying she didn't want to. She was, and so then I started backing off. I was like, oh my gosh, did I get this all wrong? And the truth was I didn't. It was true. Like, that was the catalyst for me when I knew that I wanted to marry Kylie, and I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life, is when all of my bullshit was removed, and that was through the psilocybin trip.
Nice. Awesome, man. I think that kind of goes back to, like, difference between sin and righteousness, intention. You did it with the right intention and made the right move for you, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
By the way, I totally agree with you on the intention part. I don't think anything is innately bad or good. The culture and society and religion and stuff will start labeling, this is bad, this is good. I think it has everything to do with the intention and whether it controls you or whether you control it, right? Somebody drinking wine socially is fine. Jesus drank wine. He turned wine into water into wine for his first miracle. Wine was not innately bad. But if it controls you, if you become an alcoholic, it's your intention. It's what it's doing to you is bad. It's not the actual thing. I think that's really important. I agree with you completely on the idea of intentions. It's like, how do you approach something? Why are you doing it? What's the reason for it? And are you strong enough to manage it, or is it managing you is kind of the catalyst for me on whether something is good. It's not actually whether it is good or bad. It's whether it is good or bad for me. Yeah,
for sure. Well, we're running out of time, so I'll end on this. First of all, again, thank you to all my listeners. If you made it this far, drop a like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, whatever platform you're on. And then make sure to follow Adam on all of his socials and stuff. That'll all be linked down below. But we'll end on this question. So, talking about purpose, we opened with what your purpose was, and that idea of just a very direct sense of what your own purpose is, and nobody can take that from you, right? What would your life look like now had you not had that sense of purpose?
I don't think I've ever been able to articulate, for most of my life, I haven't been able to articulate it as concisely as I did with you now. This has been more of like the meditative process of becoming more and more self-aware and really digging into myself to find this. Oh, this is what it is. But I think it's always kind of been innately in me, and I think it is for most of us. We all feel like we need it. We have a desire to progress. Now a lot of us will justify why we don't, come up with excuses, blame, whatever. I didn't get this, they got that. We'll create these comparison scenarios. But I think for me, I always knew like the most happy, most fulfilled people in this world were the people that were progressing. And the people who perceive themselves as not progressing were the most unhappy. I think that was always kind of like in my core. I don't know what my life would be like if I hadn't had that as kind of my guiding compass in life. I can't speak to that except it wouldn't be where it's at now. What I do, though, is I look back on that younger version of myself. Like, that's not me. It's like a different person. I look back on that kid who did his, who, despite kind of the odds, decided to go on a mission. And I look back on that kid his first summer who was sitting in a Little Caesars parking lot in downtown Detroit deciding whether he was going to keep doing summer cells or not or quit. Because I hadn't had a cell in 4 days and I'd fasted for 48 hours and still didn't have a cell and like almost quit and didn't. And I look back at a lot of catalysts, a lot of pivotal moments in my life. And I have so much gratitude for that younger kid, that younger version of myself that kept going. I love that guy, man. And I don't even feel like he's me anymore. He's just like this different character in the past. But I'm so thankful that he didn't quit, that he kept going. It's made all the difference.